Hello, welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in the story while once the credits begin to roll. Marqueze, what are we talking about today?
Hey Andy. So in this episode, we will be reviewing the movie Zootopia. Zootopia is an animated buddy cop film produced by Disney. Taking place in a titular city where anthropomorphic mammals coexist, it tells a story of an unlikely partnership between a rabid police officer and a red fox con artist as they uncover a criminal conspiracy involving the disappearance of predators. This movie is rated PG for some thematic elements, real humor, and action, and as always, spoilers ahead. So, Andy, if you had to give our audience a quick description of this movie, how would it be?
Yeah, Zootopia came out in 2016, so it's still kind of a fairly recent film, but again, kind of on the older side. But something I really liked about this movie is that it covers a lot of huge issues. So it starts out with a bunny who wants to become a police officer. No one really believes in her because she's a bunny, and no one's ever been a bunny cop before. She becomes a cop, and her first case, the first thing that she's assigned to do is parking duty while there's a missing persons report. And so she convinces the police chief to take over the missing persons report, and she runs into a fox named Nicholas Wilde, and they, long story short, they become partners in this case, and they go on and investigate. And the entire time, Jude Hopps, the name of the bunny, is constantly being kind of undermined until she finds the missing individuals, and that's when it kind of turns into this darker film, where you see government conspiracies, you see racial tensions, you see media misinformation, and it turns out that the mayor's assistant was behind the disappearances all along in order to make sure that the prey versus predators, the prey population is safer. And once the conspiracy is unfolded, the mayor's assistant gets arrested, and the movie's over, or so we think. So, with that kind of thing, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, so I liked it. I really, really, really liked it the first time I saw it, and then also watching it kind of like a second go to do this episode. I enjoyed it. It was animated really well. I thought the characters really well. It's pretty funny at times. There's a lot of emotions you feel. So there's times that make you really laugh. There's times that make you want to cry, sad, happy, times that make you angry. Like, it's a really good film they do, and pulling you in all types of emotional directions. I felt the pacing of it was pretty good. At no point am I like, this part's going on too long, or, I wish it would have stuck on that part more. Like, I didn't notice the pacing, which for me in a good film, I should never notice the pacing, really. Mm-hmm. It should just flow, really well.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It did. The plot was the plot, in my opinion, it's weird because it's the weakest part as well as the best part.
Yeah,
I would call it weak in the sense that it's very basic. It's your almost average buddy cop film. This new cop gets on the force, they're partnered with somebody else, whether another previous cop or whoever, and then they have to solve this case. It's pretty basic, but at the same time, the themes they brought with the plot are what got me the most. Andy, I know you had a few thoughts on those. You want to, tell them for some of our audience?
Yeah. So I think I agree with you with pretty much everything you said. I agree that the plot, I think the big thing to remember is that, it's a Disney film. It's a Disney Pixar film. And so it's going to be kind of geared towards kids, which is, there's no problems with that. But I think the thing that I appreciate about Zootopia is that, normal kids movies, they in order to keep the parents or, guardians entertained, they throw in a couple adult jokes. Whereas with Zootopia, they present really adult themes, and in a way that is easy for kids to understand, as well as kind of put it in the adult's face at hey, this is a kids movie, but also like this is a way that you can talk about race or bigotry or sexism. Like this is a way that you can have this conversation with your child. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something I really like about Zootopia, is that it does it in a way that makes it easy for kids to understand while also being as an example for adults to refer back to. In terms of the plot, I agree with you. It's kind of a very simple plot. I think something that I really appreciate is that they made it a bunny cop film instead of a buddy cop. It's a bunny cop. Had to sneak that in there. Uh, Something that kind of confuses me, and maybe you can help me. Maybe you can help explain it to me. That kind of throws me off is that it constantly references the fact that that when society first started in this universe, when society first started, that there were predators and there were prey. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until long that the predators became civilized and the prey, and they were able to coexist. See, when Bellwether is talking to both Judy Hopps and the police chief about what's going on in the town in Zootopia, that the prey is 90% of the population. The last 10% are predators, and so the part that confuses me about this plot and why there's some sort of conspiracy is how come you have a nine out of 10, like if you're looking at the population of Zootopia and you have 10 people lined up, like 9 of those are going to be considered prey and one of them is going to be considered predators. So why does Bellwether, the sheep, feel like she needs to like control that 10%? Like why is that
Mm-hmm.
much of a thing? Because if you watch the movie, like it does, like it doesn't really seem like there's much conflict. Like it doesn't seem like there's like the predators are really trying to take over. Maybe that's something that's like for our predictions part, but like I just don't understand why Bellwether feels like she needs to control that 10% of the population. If it was reversed and if it was like 90% predator, 10% prey, I think that would make a little more sense. But when it's such like a small population of predators, like why are we trying to convince the majority at this point? Like why are we trying to convince the majority that the minorities are the problem with society? So that's kind of where I kind of am just kind of like, why is this like that doesn't make sense to me as a plot, that like the majority feels oppressed when
Mm-hmm.
that's really not a thing. Like so that's kind of where I lose it with in terms of the plot. But otherwise, yeah, like uh totally agree with the pacing. Like it felt like I didn't have to think about it. Like it was just one of those things that like it just kept on moving, kept on grooving. Emotions had me everywhere. I definitely felt like the moments where Judy Hopps was being oppressed just for being a little bunny in a male dominated field. Like I definitely felt that and definitely could see how that impacts society. I definitely like noticed when Nick got discriminated against just for being a fox. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely very interesting. Um, I think something else that kind of confuses me a little bit about this movie is that there has to be some sort of breakdown in society, like in terms of like social class and social like standings, because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of unclear, like even within the prey and even within the predators, like who is ranked higher in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like higher like socioeconomics, like in terms of like looking at them, like who is better, quote unquote.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
kind of
why.
confusing that way.
Yeah, so I'll admit too, like as I was watching it, I was trying to like just trying to say, okay, so who's supposed to be like the black people, right? Who's supposed to be like the white people who are on top, like you know what? But there's actually really not a clear answer, which I really
Exactly.
actually enjoy. Like, ironically enough, they don't make this film like black and white when they're talking about race.
Right.
They make it actually a much more diverse issue of like that there's just a general prejudice problem, but it's not that any one particular group is only prejudiced towards the
Yeah.
other. And it's more realistic in that way, I would say, in that like this group might oppress another, but they might be oppressed by another group, and then that group might be actually talked down by this group, and so like
Exactly.
it's a lot more dynamic. But in general, they do, like, I would say in general, if you had to kind of go more black and white with it, it is this predator versus prey mentality. And yeah, like as you mentioned, it's mentioned multiple times throughout the film, but I didn't notice till watching it for the second or third time around. It's actually in the very beginning, like the very first scene.
Yeah. With
Judy
the ketchup
Hobbs.
blood splurting out.
Yeah, Judy Hobbs is as a child, like acting in like her like class or whatever, and they're doing the story of like a long time ago there were predators who were savage, but now predators and prey live in harmony and everything's all good. And it like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, all right, slavery. Like this is America, like wiping over slavery. I'm like, yeah, there used to be a time when things were really bad and the races were separated, but now everything's okay. But you know, throughout this entire film, you know, they're trying to let you know, like, but everything's not okay. You know, there actually is a lot of issues still with prejudice and people, you know, assuming certain things about people. And like I said, it's not one way. It's not the people up top versus people on bottom. It's people on top versus people on bottom versus people on top, people who, you know, are a little bit of both. Like there's discrimination goes against the predators, discrimination goes against the prey, but also in particular discrimination goes against foxes too, who, you know, are hated by both the predators and the prey. And it's just, it's so kind of, I would say, dynamic in how it does it, which I feel also is more palatable to people who like don't want, you know, just some like racist thing shoved in their face or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, I should say racist, but like racial topics shoved in their face, or, you know, a little more fun for kids to understand. Like you have options of who you want to identify with. You can identify with Judy Hobbs because she is not able, well, she actually does end up, but there's so many things to kind of stopping her from achieving her dreams of being the first bunny police officer, of, you know, being able to solve cases. Everyone says she's too small, she's too cute, she's too this, she's too that, you know. But then at the same time, she is the one who assumes certain things about a fox or whatever, you know, and, you know, how reaches for her fox repellent and all kinds of things of that nature. And so, yeah, I think it's a pretty dynamic way it talks about race and just culture and just very in general, like kind of prejudice systems. You know, something
that I mean, something that when I first watched it, I loved the movie, but I didn't look too much into the movie too much. But when I watched it again for the show again, you know, you definitely, my first impression was like, is this going to be like a feminism, like a feminism tale where like she can kind of stand above? And, you know, the first sort of glimpse into that is when she tells her parents that she wants to become a police officer, and her parents just tell her to stop dreaming, just like you know, instead of don't stop believing, they just said don't stop believing. Like they just said don't believe. Like they're just like don't believe, give up. Like you got nothing in you. Like you're a bunny. There's never been a bunny cop before. And I think that if you look at society, like if according to, I did a little bit of research, and which is, you know, something I like to do. I'm a little bit of a nerd. And I did a little research, and according to Data USA in 2018. 85% of police officers were male-identifying folks, and 15% were female-identifying folks. So that kind of resembles like, okay, so she's a small bunny, she's a small female-identifying bunny, at least from what I understood from the movie. And so her parents are just telling her, like, could be telling her it's a dangerous profession, like that bunnies just don't typically do because you're just a small little bunny. But she's like, I'm going to believe in myself and I'm going to do it. And even when she gets there, like the police, like the first thing that the police chief says was, as part of the Mammal Inclusive Initiative or something like that, which is very similar to like this diversity and affirmative action, like making sure that we have, like that we're looking at the person as a whole instead of just making sure that we have like a bunch of white people. Like, you see that like he introduces her in that way, like we're hiring her because of the Mammal Inclusive Initiative, or like, and even like just kind of looks down on her that way and just assigns her the parking kind of detail, and essentially makes her more of a meter maid, makes her a meter maid, which is way more administrative. Which, if you look at society, like when women were joining the workforce, like they were given more highly administrative roles, which is very much in line with the meter maid type position. But again, that didn't stop her from prevailing, and she became like, she set a goal for herself of giving out 200 tickets before lunch, and she crushed it. And so it just covers a lot of topics. And it kind of, going back to what I'm saying, is that like you think it's going to be this feminism, like I'm coming above, and then like you were saying earlier, like it quickly dives into more of a racial detail where like you see like when Nicholas Wilde is trying to get ice cream, like of course it's like a huge scam, but Nicholas Wilde is trying to get ice cream for his quote unquote son, and the
Best scene in the movie.
the person who's running the ice cream shop literally takes out a sign that says we have the right to refuse service, kind of like in the civil rights movement when you had people denying service to people. So it's a very I feel like it's a very simple way of explaining larger issues within society.
Yeah, no, I agree. And kind of back to the sexism topic you brought up. So Mayor Bellwether, who's like the assistant to to the assistant Mayor Lionheart or whatever. So back up. So the same way that Judy Hobbs was like, she could do more, but she was just simply put on mater me duty. And then she even exceeds that. But, they're thinking like, oh, whatever, it's supposed to keep doing that. Same, there's a scene where Assistant Mayor Bellwether, where she's just like a little tiny sheep. And they go there and they're like, yeah, like that must be cool, whatever, like Assistant Mayor and all that. And she's like, well, to be honest, I'm really just like a glorified secretary to like the actual mayor. Like, so once again, having her, even though she feels like she could do a whole lot more, they just kind of put her back in her place, and like she's just a secretary to the real mayor,
right.
And it's like, you just do all this little filing crap for me. That's really it. And so for me, it's like those kind of take it out of like racism and put it more towards sexism, of like both kind of like prime female characters in the movie are like constantly pushed below what their actual capabilities are.
And you can tell that Bellwether was proud in that moment that Judy Hobbs became a police officer. When she got to put the badge, she was so proud to see Judy Hobbs become a police officer, and says that someone's got to be looking out for the little guy, like someone's got to be doing, like, you're doing a great thing for the little guys, kind of referring to like the smaller prey. And sort of like those that like don't believe in themselves, like, and so that's where like the feminism part of this movie kind of pops out.
Like if I had to kind of like categorize it, like I would say overall the movie kind of deals with prejudice, but the two boxes inside that are like race and sexism. But overall, it's more so just prejudice.
Yes. And I think prejudice definitely comes into play as the movie moves into its sort of second to third act, when they discover, when they find the missing people, and they don't quite know exactly, but when they're sneaking around in the lab, Judy Hobbs overhears a scientist talking about how like the substances, like they don't know what the cause is making them turn into savages, which sidebar, savages, like in this movie, like I first was thinking that like, okay, like they're making fun of Native Americans because like that's like part of like the savage culture, like they used to call Native American savages, but I actually think in this movie they're using savages to replace the word thug, because people usually refer to minorities and marginalized populations as thugs. So I thought that was a pretty interesting take. But going back into the overall point, like Judy Hobbs here is a scientist in a lab coat. They're not sure what's causing the revert, causing these animals to go back, but it could be related to their biology. Again, the scientist wasn't sure, but that's what they were speculating because at the time, that's what them and the current mayor, were not Bellwether, but the other mayor was trying to speculate. Like they're trying to figure out what was going on. And so when Judy Hobbs was up there, you can tell that she didn't really know the facts. She didn't really know it, but she was the first time for her in the limelight, first time for her doing a press conference. And she remembers the scientists saying that it could be related to their biology. And so when she's asked that question, like what's causing the missing people to become savages, she kind of makes up an answer and says that it could be in their biology. And so you start seeing a bunch of microaggressions. You start seeing like there was a subway scene and the mom pulls her child, who are like the mom and the child are prey, and they are sitting next to a predator, and you see the mom pull the baby closer to her, away from the predator. You see protests about how predators are like, it's not in our biology. You just see like a bunch of chaos sort of ensue. And that's kind of what happens with media misinformation when you get these people in authority who don't have all the facts kind of give their speculations and their guess and how the impact it has on society as a whole and how it influences our actions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit nail right on the head right there. Of just like kind of like a lot of the different intricacies when it comes to dealing with like a diverse society where there's the diversity and there's the opportunity, but it's stifled in certain ways, kind of more sly ways here and there. And like, it's really important to know that like Mayor Bellwether, like did actually really want Judy to succeed and was really happy putting the badge on her. And, like even at the end where Mel Bellwether's about to, try and kill her, she's like, I really did like you. I really wanted you to succeed, but you just kind of stuck your nose where it shouldn't have been. But yeah, overall, would you say this movie, met your expectations, didn't meet, or exceeded your expectations?
Yeah, I would say it blew me away. Like this movie, like I absolutely loved this movie. I didn't usually I go in with movies with low expectations. Because I know that this is a Disney Pixar movie, like I can kind of rest assured with the brand that Disney kind of puts out, that it was going to be at least a good film. It definitely exceeded my expectations. I think that they did a good job of introducing complex topics in a digestible way.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I would say definitely exceeded my expectations when I first saw it. It's always weird with like kids films with like how much adult humor are they going to have? Are they going to have too much that's going to outweigh it? So like the kids are missing half of what's going on? Or are they going to have it to where it's like you got the same scene that's both funny to an adult and a kid, And I mean, if anyone's good at doing that, it is Disney. So like, you can trust that they're going to be able to do it well. And I think they really did do it incredibly well with this movie. I thought there were a lot of scenes that were just adorable,
Yeah.
but like also like really kind of hard hitting and, really like as an adult watching it, I was like, man, this movie is really making me happen to, like think and consider. I'm surprised that Disney was really going out there reaching those topics. But yeah, so to move on though, Zootopia 2.
Zootopia
if there was a
2.
second, which I'm surprised there has not been a second
I
one
know,
yet,
right? It's been long enough.
It's probably going to come out. Watch, we're saying it here right
know,
now.
right?
It's going to come out.
Someone from Disney is going to be listening to this and be like, "Wow, what an amazing idea!"
They're going to about to take our new plot, but yeah, as most buddy cop films, I would say like it's very easy to set up for a second film, and so. Yes. Now I'm posing a question to you, Andy. Okay. If this was going to be continued, if there was going to be a second movie, where do you think they would go from here?
What's my Poppin prediction?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen Iron Man 2?
Yes. So actually, very recently, I watched it like a week ago.
I know. All right. So the way that Iron Man 2 kind of starts out with the Russian boss, watching like the news of Tony Stark taking over. I know that Iron Man 2 is not the most was probably one of the uh, least favorites of amongst fans, but I think if you do put it in like a Zootopia setting, maybe it could work. Where for something that we haven't really discussed is like how they figured out that it was a government conspiracy and that it was actually like a lab that Bellwether was kind of orchestrating to turn these predators into savages, and that Judy Hobbs discovered that conspiracy and shut it down. And at the end of the film, Bellwether gets arrested. My thought process is, if we look at the film, it's a reflection of American society. I don't want to speak of other. I don't want to speak globally, but to me, it's a reflection of American society. And so you can remove the person in power, but the problems are still there. And so, where are these? I don't believe the prey are going to instantly feel comfortable again after Bellwether gets arrested. Like, some of them might not believe it. Like, some of them might not believe that Bellwether was up to it. Some of them might have already been feeling this way, that predators are kind of the lower class, and like it's time for the prey to stand above, even though they hold the majority in Zootopia.
That's what I'm thinking.
So what I'm kind of thinking is that the Zootopia 2 kind of takes off where it kind of leaves off, or maybe it's like a couple months down the road, where Judy Hopps is still kind of dealing with people who like don't understand that it was more of a government conspiracy and not actual predators reverting to their savage ways. You're gonna have people calling the media fake news. I feel like you could see more.
So relevant.
I think you could see more protests. And what I think could happen, in terms of a movie plot, and not what these people represent, but in terms of a movie plot, is we saw the in this movie, we saw the oppressor kind of try to hold a takeover for like over the marginalized, but maybe in Zootopia 2 you see kind of like the marginalized be like, you know what, like we're kind of tired of this, like and making it a larger issue, and trying to maybe from the predator's perspective, like a unsung hero comes out and tries to take over Zootopia, and take the power away from the prey. And so what Zootopia 2 could be more of like trying to solve the complex issues that it established in the first film.
I like that. I like that a lot. The way, so you kind of started on the way I was thinking. You kind of started on the path I was going, which is, for me, it's like whether Assistant Mayor Bellwether was right in, turning all these, predators back to savages so that, causes disruption and people will start discharging predators. To me, regardless of that, there's something that has been happening to Mayor Bellwether to make her feel that way.
Right.
There's something that's been happening to her to make her feel like she needs to do this, to make her feel that, like, since predators are always on top or predators are always kicking down the prey or whatever, And so I feel that there are going to be people who, even though they know what she did was wrong, that are going to relate to her cause. I could easily see Mayor Bellwether kind of igniting a bunch of radicals. And who have also kind of
we've seen that too.
We've very much seen that, and so I could easily see Mayor Bellwether igniting a bunch of radicals who either kind of help her get out of jail and then come back to power, or just go on their own way and, a couple months down the line happen
Right.
to like plan some new thing where, they're not trying to set up the predators as much as they're directly trying to go at them, in whatever shape
Right.
or form. I could also see Judy Hobbs and Nick were both the outsiders that, they're already, we know, wasn't a bunny on the force. She's the first bunny police officer. I'm assuming he might be the first fox. I mean, it doesn't say, but we don't see any other foxes, and there seems to be a general distrust for foxes in the area.
That's
and
true.
So I could easily see those two being highly picked on in the next movie by the rest of the force. Even if, they did solve the major case, I could still see people picking on both Nick and Judy. And so, or maybe they're just more picking on Nick because Judy was like the savior or whatever. And so maybe that causes a wedge in their relationship because even though he's not a police officer, he also gets picked on by the police officer. So like, I think both those could kind of happen in the same plot if possible. But yeah,
so you're saying you're saying kind of like a 20-second Jump Street where everyone loves Channing Tatum, but
yes.
it's like
yes.
I could see that. I can see that, and I'll jump down that point a little bit. Maybe I'd like to think that unraveling the government conspiracy of Bellwether has earned the respect of the other officers, but maybe the next one is more focused on Nick getting that respect. And so maybe I would like to think that in the second film they expand the bunny cop idea and maybe make her like they form a special bunny cop unit that are like investigators, because her character was very much more of an investigator type role. And so maybe they make her like head investigator of the special bunny unit. And Nick is kind of like trying to figure out his own identity within like that, because he kind of was like put in the position because of Judy. But like, I don't like if he never met Judy, like he never would have become a cop, where Judy was always going to become a cop. So it becomes more of like a, like you abandoned, like more of like a, I, from Nick's perspective, was abandoned by my friend who had this amazing opportunity, and I'm continued to be like discriminated against for being a fox, even though I helped you solve this really amazing case. And I think that talking more about your point and how like there's going to be a new person to kind of take over for Bellwether, I honestly think this might be weird, but I think you could take both routes and make a movie out of it, because that's kind of what they did with this one. Was like they took this overarching kind of cliche, like the predators are taking over, but turned it into a government conspiracy. And so I feel like you can have both of these sort of plots in play, where you can have someone just take over and maybe does it in more of like a strategic way, a more subtle way. And you have like someone from the predator group trying to take over, and the person in power for the prey is like, obviously this person is a vigilante, they're not doing good, they're trying to divide us, when in reality it's the person in power again who is trying to fuel that fire and divide Zootopia.
Dude, 100%. Dude, I think we need to write this next script for Zootopia 2. Disney needs to go ahead and hire us. We can do this well if we really wanted to.
I know, right?
But yeah, no, I think, I think that either way, you can mix all of our ideas, and like I think they would equally be legitimate plots.
What are some? I was going to say before that happens, like what are some issues you think could be expanded on in Zootopia 2? Because Zootopia 1 was kind of like was a film that introduced these topics. Do you think that they stick with these topics? Do you think they expand on the topics that are in here? Do you think there are things that they left out that that could be included in the sequel?
Well, so like as we said, that like it all seems to go under the box of prejudice, but within that box are two separate boxes of kind of race and sexism. I think one, if they wanted to touch on the topic of maybe like xenophobia and just fear of foreigners or people who are, different outside of that group.
Yeah.
I don't know how they would do that exactly, but they could try that. I think touching on topics of they kind of a little bit, but not really, on more of just like pure culture. So not necessarily so in this movie, it wasn't race, but like species, like speciesism. Whereas I felt like maybe if they did it like more based on culture of because she came from a small town and Judy Hobbs. And they kind of bagged on her a little bit here and there of like, oh, you're just a small town person. Go back to the bunny farm or whatever, you're not meant for the big city. So they could kind of touch on that a little bit more too. Just like this very big culture difference of people who live a more rural life more than the city life and whatnot. Because I would still like to keep with the overall theme of prejudice, but yeah, I would like to expand it in multiple different ways.
Yeah.
But I mean, I gotta say, they definitely did a good one. Did it well the first time.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, I think probably a way that they can introduce xenophobia is if they do like from like my like the subplot that I came up with. Maybe the person that's kind of rising up is from Zootropolis or from from a different town, or something that they didn't even cover at all, which was kind of surprising. They didn't have any birds or aquatic animals in this film. So that could be how they introduce foreigners, is having some sort of fish, shark, sort of animal kind of be introduced into the film and see how they interact with Zootopia.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was thinking something along the same lines of some water life or whatever. Because I don't think we saw any of that. Yeah, there's a lot you could do with it. But I guess so. In wrapping this all up, would you recommend this movie to people?
Yeah, of course, I'd recommend. I think this is a good movie overall, and I think that if you're looking. It depends on the type of movie watcher you're going for. If you're into action adventure, this probably isn't for you. This isn't much of an action adventure film. But I think if you're a kid, you're gonna love this movie. It covers again these really tough topics in a very easy way to register and understand. If you're an adult with a child. I think that you will definitely appreciate this because I would imagine you run into these sort of issues every day with your child, and you'll have to try to explain. You'll have to explain racism. You'll have to explain sexism. You'll have to explain You'll have to explain prejudice, and so this movie does it in a way that can help kids understand it. And help them rationalize it, and you could probably have a pretty decent. I feel like you could have a good conversation with a kid about this movie, using this movie as kind of a tool to help introduce these topics. And then something that maybe it's because I'm kind of that student affairs, higher education type background person. If I saw this movie in grad school, I think I would have loved it. I think that I would have I'd have such a great conversation with my cohort. And so I think that even as an adult, if you're open to Disney movies, if you're open to animated movies, I think that this is a really solid choice. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Yeah, no, like I said, I thought this was great. It exceeded my expectations. I definitely recommended it to people when it first came out, and I would still now. It's wild how
it feels like
even more.
It feels like it's more relevant. Yeah, I feel like it's more relevant now.
Which is just wild. But yeah, I highly recommend it. I thought it was good. I thought it exceeded expectations.
So
how would you rate this on our rating system? So, listeners at home, just so you know, our rating system, we got small, medium, large, and then big bucket. And this all refers to popcorn. Do you need a small bucket of popcorn, medium, large, or a big one? So, Andy, what would you give this?
I'm going big bucket here. And
Ooh.
I know that's like high praise. You know, we have our first big bucket in the series from me, at least. You know, it might not have had like the most original plot, but I think you have to give the animators, you have to give the creators a lot of credit for creating a very digestible film, and creating a film that's entertaining across demographics, across so many different barriers. Like I feel like a lot of people can really enjoy this film. And so I think I can forgive the simple plot for the overall message and what's the word? Like execution of the film. Like I think that you can overlook it just based off of that. What about you?
Yeah. So I'm in between large and big bucket. I think I'm gonna go with large just because
Okay.
there were things that it could have done better. But that being said, like the fact that's even in between, I'm even considering it means that it's a pretty good film. Like I agree with everything you said. You know, they really did kind of take they did take these out like complex topics and simplify them and then wrap them in cuteness, you know, which it's
Hey, don't call
great
me
for
cute.
you know, it's great for a kid's film, and like, you know, you're not going to get incredibly nuanced and complex for a kid's film. And so I think I would say it definitely did its job.
Yes.
And you know, as we were researching this, it was the fourth highest grossing movie of 2016, grossed over $1 billion, which, you know,
Dang.
definitely did a job.
It did well.
But I don't know, like if I had to go for improvements, I would have got this big bucket for me. I feel like to address the underlying theme more, because like they mentioned how prejudice was a problem and how you can't judge people based on the prejudice, but I didn't feel like they dove enough into like what are the underlying problems that are really causing it? Like why did Mayor Bellwether feel so oppressed by these predators?
That's true.
Why, you know, had there never been a bunny cop? You know, like they didn't get into the underlying themes that really drive this stuff, which once again, it's a kid's film, so I'm not really expecting them to go that deep. But, you know, that's the only thing I would say is probably holding me back from giving it a perfect. But like,
I mean,
it's pretty close to big bucket.
nothing's holding them back from doing like a little cutscene at the end when they realize that Bellwether is part of the plot. Like nothing's stopping them from doing a little cutscene and showing like why she felt that way, whether like she felt this, like whether a predator did something to her or her family, or like whether like a predator kept getting in the way of her progress. Like there's nothing that could have prevented them from doing that. So I can understand it. I can appreciate that comment.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's what we had for this episode, y'all. Please let us know what you thought of our continuation of Zootopia. Did you agree? Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Poppin Predictions, and let us know your thoughts and how you thought the movie should continue.
Yeah, let us know what movies you would like to see us do next. Yeah, see you next time.
Have a good one. Peace.
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 Peace.